Five Nights at Freddy's is an indie horror game series that over the years has seen multiple different alterations and changes in its formula of how it wanted to portray itself as a game series and how it wanted to do its horror. The series throughout the different games doesn't exactly try to rely on one specific element, except they always tried to find a perfect balance between all elements present in the different games, although it was never actually able to find a middle ground. What it was successful at, intentionally or not, was its usage of the environment, dialogue, how characters look, and so on and so forth. It always tried to take advantage of the detail. Which brings us to discuss the first game in a series of many books, games, and other media of how the Five Nights at Freddy's series managed to portray its horror hidden in detail. Now, the first thing you're probably saying to yourself is that the FNaF games aren't that scary, and well, that's true, but what made the FNaF games so accessible was the fact that it wasn't gory or really terrifying. It sits perfectly in the middle so that anyone can actually play the games. Although, where the main aspects of FNaF shine is through utilizing the environment and dialogue to tell a story without actually having to show any of it. With FNaF 1, our very first introduction to this was with the phone guy, who would right away introduce you into what could happen if you fail to survive during the night, and allows the player to come up with their own ideas on what happened to previous employees who have failed before you. The phone calls are the most important part of the games, because not only does it set up the fact that not everything is as it seems, it also sets up the very first elements of the story for the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and all without ever actually having to show it. I would like to mention a video by Not Real Name Not At All, who does a deeper analysis of the phone guy's calls in the games if you're more interested in his role during the first game. Of course, the phone calls are not the only element that plays into this. We also have the environment, something that will always make the first game stand out with how it was able to utilize the environment to not only make it feel as if it was haunted, but it also took the opportunity of expanding the story by replacing something so easy to miss, such as the rules paper on the right hallway, by changing it into multiple different newspaper clippings introducing that children have gone missing in this location, and the person who did was found, and that the pizzeria was threatened to shut down over the incident by the end of the year, which unfortunately would happen. Also, another thing to note is that in the exact same hallway, the posters of the characters are also known to randomly change into children crying, and also writing that says "It's me," which is also known to pop up during a small hallucination segment that randomly occurs during the gameplay. Another thing to note is that going into night 5, the characters start to noticeably glitch out, indicating that these robots are not at all just walking around because they're programmed to, but rather they are haunted. This mixed in with the distorted audio that plays at the beginning of the night, along with the robots making glitched, distorted audio sounds, provides more than enough reason to know that they're going to keep coming after you. The overall ambience in the game greatly benefits it in the long run, especially in its more calm moments, where it can be seen as dull because it gives you that desolate feeling of something isn't right. Other rooms that are known to change as parts of service, which will have the mask and endos staring dead into the camera, along with Bonnie being able to get up close and personal to the camera as well, along with Pirate Cove's sign having the chance to display "It's me," and Foxy has begun his attack phase, which brings us down to one final anomaly. The poster on the left hallway of Freddy, which has the chance to change into Freddy's head being ripped off, and a golden bear that if you stare at it for too long will summon the robot into the office, sitting completely still, lifeless, eventually leading into a close-up still frame of Golden Freddy, causing the game to crash. The only other way to encounter Golden Freddy is entering 1987 in the custom night, which refers back to the bite of 87 that the phone guy mentioned earlier in the game. Now that I've covered the basic groundwork for what I mean by FNaF's horror being hidden in detail, you'll see a lot of connections back to the first FNaF game in future entries, but also start to see a part of the series where they're dedicated mainly to actually showing lore, and more focused on the gameplay than Easter eggs, which is what I like to call the pieces put together part of the series, which brings us to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Right away, the game drops the player straight into FNaF 2's dream sequence cutscenes, which has the player placed in Freddy, where you're left to turn left and right, viewing the rest of the empty pizzeria along with your fellow bandmates, Bonnie and Chica, who are standing there lifeless. It eventually cuts out hearing the robots screeching and leads to an error screen where you're then forced into the main menu of the game, where you meet face to face with the new variants of the original cast along with their withered down counterparts. Just like the first game, Phone Guy would be your guide to learning more about the location and how to fend off the robots. And this time, there are no doors to protect yourself from the animatronics. You're given a Freddy mask and a flashlight to use against the new batch of robots along with some familiar faces, and a new mechanic exclusive to the cameras, the music box. But what you need to know for night 1 is that it refers to there being an old location that's some sort of event occurred and to gain a negative reputation. Night 2 brings discussion around the withered animatronics and how they attempted to repair them in order to have the new technology, but decided against it because of how ugly they looked, and according to the phone guy, had a bad smell. Night 3 explains that phone guy also mentioned rumors about the location and says that they weren't true. Night 4. The phone guy had mentioned the location had been put under investigation and that Fazbear Entertainment denies any wrongdoings, and that these things happen sometimes. And the robots had also been tampered with, in which they were acting very aggressive towards adults specifically. Night 5. The location was put into lockdown and emphasizes concern around previous employees. The phone guy mentions that they should be becoming available and you being moved into that position instead, and that they were trying to also get in contact with the original owners, whose location was called Fredbear's Family Diner, which had been closed for years at that point. After finishing Night 5 of the game, you will unlock the 6th night, which had another phone call referring to another suit being used, a yellow one, and that the location had been shut down. In turn, the robots had also started to act out of control. In the end, it states that there was one more event being held the next day, a birthday. So with just the phone calls alone, there's more than enough information to know that there's a lot going on in the background during this game specifically, and that this isn't the first time a tragedy this bad has happened in a Freddy's location. Beating Night 5 would grant you a paycheck revealing the date to be 1987, giving us our time frame of how everything will slowly connect back to each other as we get further into the series. Now before we get into the minigames, something that will start to appear a lot more in the future entries are the cutscenes. We have the cutscenes that play at the beginning of each night. Also mentioned earlier, we opened in the game placed in a Freddy costume in the FNaF 1 location. Now for the first cutscene, nothing happens, but slowly as you progress through the game, things actually start to happen at first, with the animatronics staring back at you with a sort of concerned looking expression, to then encountering Golden Freddy staring dead into your soul, and the other animatronics followed suit, until finally the puppet appears, who blocks your view as you try to turn away. Now what this means for the story, I have no clue. Each cutscene ends with "It's me" besides the first one, which ends in air. My guess at first was that it's foreshadowing a future entry in the series, but as it stands right now, I have no proper explanation for it outside of it giving a small sense of dread, especially when the ambience track that plays throughout it. Now we can finally enter the minigames of FNaF 2, which can be attained by simply getting jump scared and will randomly throw you into a minigame instead of you sending it to a game over screen. Our first minigame, Take Cake to the Children, contains a Freddy sprite taking cake, well, to the children. Now, what's off about this one specifically is that there's a child outside the establishment. As you play the minigame, a purple car starts to slowly drive up, leading to the purple guy getting out of the car, and the child locked outside starts to cry more, until purple guy takes off and you get jump scared by the puppet. The word "save him" can be uncovered by the letters that can be heard in the background. Foxy Go Go Go. This minigame features Foxy, who runs to the other room to surprise the children. As you play, you would eventually find purple guy waiting on the side, smiling, and once you run into the room again, they're dead. The minigame ends with a jump scare from Withered Foxy. You play as the puppet in Give Gives Give Life, and are tasked to give presents to the 4 bodies scattered across the room. Once you do, you are then tasked to give masks to the bodies, which once completed would spawn a 5th body in the middle, but would lead to a jump scare from Withered Golden Freddy right away. The word "Save Them" can be heard in the background. Save Them contains Withered Freddy, who is tasked to follow the puppet across the FNaF 2 location, with bodies also scattered across the location to complete the minigames. You have to run into one of the bodies, Golden Freddy, following the puppet, encountering Mangle, or have the chance to have purple guys spawn in and chase after you to be taken to a screen featuring the text "You can't." These minigames are mainly focused on the idea of analyzing everything, especially with most of the minigames featuring letters being played in the background that can be taken to create words. Although some details may have been retconned in future entries, what was shown here at first was important to crafting together ideas at what this all could mean, from just having FNaF 1 and FNaF 2 at their disposal. Especially questioning the existence of the purple guy and his motives due to every minigame who shows up has some connections to the murders in the minigame. It's the end of FNaF 2, seeing the demise of the toy animatronics is seen in the Night 6 ending, but also mentions to the return of the classic characters, being the Withereds, in a new location sometime in the future. Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the original end to the trilogy, before obviously not ending. Now, this entry brings a Springtrap and also the game with the most lore out of the 3 that has been released so far. But if you remember what I said earlier in the intro, the games were usually successful in capturing one specific element perfectly in each entry. But in FNaF 3's case, where it fell flat was the jump scares. Also to make things less repetitive, and also since this is the last game in this video that will have phone calls in it, I've summarized everything you need to know into a paragraph. You've gotten a job as a security guard in Fazbear's Fright, and of course, being the first night of FNaF 3, no threat is present in the building, at least not until night 2. They've uncovered the real one, or who is more popularly known as Springtrap, and also discovered some vintage tapes from the location, guiding you through the process of using spring locks in the first tape. If the spring locks were to go off, instead of dying in public, they want you to escape into the safe room so that you can die in there instead. After some tragedies occurring with multiple incidents with the spring locks going off in the sister location, Fazbear Entertainment had the brilliant idea of finally retiring the suits, saving them from possibly multiple lawsuits that have ended the brand. Fazbear Entertainment warned against using the safe room as a break room, and also noted that the spring Bonnie suit had noticeably moved. In the final tape, the safe rooms were officially sealed off. Obviously, with this just alone would connect back to the minigames that you get to play at the end of each night, seeing the demise of the FNaF 1 cast by the hands of the purple guy and from the help of Shadow Freddy. In some of the minigames, secrets can be found that would be helpful on the path to getting the good ending of the game, but otherwise, once all the animatronics are gone, a ghost spirit would instead replace the robots. Making your way to the safe room, you would find a scared purple guy in fear as you chased him, as the other victims of the purple guy watched, blocking the exit. Eventually, he would decide to run into the springlock suit and hope successfully managing to become a threat to the spirits, but the suit suddenly went off. The thought of what the phone calls mentioned about the spring locks come back to mind, as the suit purple guy just jumped into was a spring lock suit, and due to the environment that surrounded the area of the safe room, the locks went off, and the killer finally learned what the true meaning of suffering was. The spirits faded away as the suit went off and marked the end of the purple guy until 30 years later. The events of FNaF 3 take place, and throughout it, so does the build up to Happy's Day. Each minigame features a different character from FNaF 2 besides one of the minigames which you play as Fredbear. All the minigames are pretty simple. Each follows you breaking out of the intended path to finding a lost soul, in which you grant them cake that you've collected as well in the different minigames. Of course, with everything else in this game scattered around are weird objects, or how some of the environments give a sort of creep factor, as if you weren't supposed to be there, even if you only see them for like 5 seconds. Once successfully finding all the lost souls, they'll be sent to Happy's Day, in which you find yourself playing as a spirit, wearing a puppet mask, walking towards another spirit sat on the other side of the table. You find your friends waiting for the party to begin as you walk closer to the table, eventually placing down the cake, and at last, they were able to have their happiest day. Although what can be seen as poetic is a false reality, because to this day we have no clue what ending truly happened. Either way, beating night 6 would reveal that even after the building was set ablaze, Springtrap can still be spotted in the background of the image in the newspaper if you brighten it up. Before we get to our conclusion for the game, something I'd like to mention and dedicate some time to is Springtrap. Springtrap was the peak of Five Nights at Freddy's designs, the killer in the flesh. Even after meeting a horrible end, he lived on through a rotten Bonnie costume, his body becoming one with the suit, mending together. As you play through FNaF 3, Springtrap could be heard making noises as he made his way around the location, attempting to blend into the environment, which his design fit perfectly in the establishment, making it actually difficult, with help from how the cameras were designed in this game, to make it an actual challenge to find him. Although, of course, due to the game as well as some of his positions may seem a little funky, once you see him up close, you can really analyze the soulless eyes of this monster. Of course, you won't really learn the extent of how evil he truly was until future entries and books. Just with his design alone, you know he's the real deal, and with every story has an end. Although for this tale, he'll always keep coming back. Five Nights at Freddy's 4, the game that actually did horror perfectly in its gameplay, and also was the second attempt at ending the series. This time, the monsters followed you home and no one is here to help you. For the first time in the Five Nights at Freddy's series, free roam is introduced into the mix, with 2 doors being on your side, a closet to your front, and a bed to your back. All fronts have danger present in each, and the sense of feeling safe at all is gone. Ambience this time around is your friend, as the game forces you to make sure you plan each move perfectly, with giving yourself enough time to make sure that no one is waiting for you just outside the door. The nightmares, being the cast from the FNaF 1, just completely removing any sense of friendliness they once possessed, have truly become monsters. With sharp teeth, sharp claws, and a torn suit. Of course, with this being the finale, the tale of the Afton family gets visited. A story of a child versus the world. His brother throughout the game does everything in his power to scare the younger brother because of his fear of the robots. And throughout the events, a Fredbear plush can be spotted by his side at every turn, watching and guiding him. As you learn before you start the minigames, there's a countdown to a party. As you progress, the environment opens up for you to explore. Seeing familiar faces scattered about, and for the first time ever, we see the Fredbear's location, mentioned in FNaF 2. Visiting the location, you accidentally uncover your father stuffing someone into his suit, and as you attempt to try and run, you get stopped by Fredbear, which you try to run again, but haven't learned from the first time. It was useless. This time, we are locked in a parts and service room, crying, begging to be freed from the nightmare, but no one came. Stuck alone with the lifeless robotics. Then the party finally came around. As a final way to surely scare the younger brother, the older brother gathers his friends to drag him towards Fredbeard to give him a kiss, and they shove him into the suit. The locks start to unwind as the tears of the child flood the suit, leading to them snapping, causing the suit to shut its mouth, crushing the child's skull. The room falls silent as the shock of what happened floods in, and in the end, you meet yourself face to face with a friend. Who can be talking through it is unknown. Your friends gather around to comfort you. As the end slowly drew near, a promise was made to put you back together. After this part would have been the second half of the video, but due to the 3-month gap between videos, my bad, I decided that I would be moving on from this project. So hopefully in the end I was able to explain what I thought made FNaF so enjoyable to me. And going forward, I hope to push out more videos a lot quicker. But as for now, thank you for watching.